Welcome to the Geo Highlights YouTube channel. Today, we delve into one of the most pivotal theories in human origins, the out of Africa theory, which proposes that all modern humans trace their ancestry to a relatively recent expansion from the African continent. This theory, supported by a wealth of genetic, fossil, and archaeological evidence, reshaped our understanding of how our species populated the globe. Charles Darwin was first to formulate the out of Africa theory, laid its beginnings with a remarkable foresight based on comparative anatomy and geographic distribution. He observed the anatomical similarities between humans and African great apes, particularly gorillas and chimpanzees, and reasoned that these anthropomorphous apes pointed to Africa as the most likely origin of human ancestors. Darwin's 5-year voyage on the HMS Beagle established him as an eminent geologist as well as biologist. While renowned as a biologist for his theory of evolution, Charles Darwin was also a geologist who in his early career studied geological formations during his nearly 5-year world voyage on the HMS Beagle, making extensive observations that often overshadowed his biological notes. Darwin's geological work critically influenced his understanding of geological processes and the immense timescales they required. The understanding of the geological time scale profoundly shaped his later thinking on the slow, gradual nature of evolutionary change, which he described in his book, The Origin of Species, written in 1859. Darwin had been working on his theory of natural selection since 1837, soon after his epic voyage on the HMS Beagle. It was in 1871 that Darwin published his book, The Descent of Man, an explosive and highly controversial theory of man's evolution in Africa. Darwin recognized that chimps and gorillas were man's closest cousins and that they lived in Africa. Therefore, it was likely that that is where man evolved. It was in his later work, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex, 1871, that Darwin explicitly addressed human evolution and first proposed, based on anatomical similarities with great apes, that our early ancestors likely originated in Africa. Darwin knew that he would meet enormous resistance to his theory, so he waited till later in life to publish it. Darwin recognized this reflexive denial of our savage past in The Descent of Man when he warned, "We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities, with sympathy which feels for the most debased, with benevolence which extends not only to other men, but to the humblest living creature, with his godlike intellect which has penetrated into the movements and constitution of the solar system, with all these exalted powers man still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin." This is what science currently recognizes as Darwin's descent of man. Let's define the term hominins, which will be used often in this presentation. The term hominins is used for the group of primates that includes modern humans and all of our immediate ancestors. Essentially, if an ancient ape-like creature walked upright or showed other human-like characteristics, it's likely considered a hominin. The earliest known hominins appeared in Africa several million years ago. Paleoanthropologists such as Dart, Broom, the Leakeys, Johansen, and Berger found the earlier hominins in Africa, and our current understanding is that many of the hominin species remained in Africa and some left Africa, starting about 1.8 million years ago. The anthropologists who studied Australopithecus and Homo habilis helped uncover the story of our ancient ancestors in Africa, with some of their discoveries hinting at who stayed on the continent and who might have led to humans that later left. Raymond Dart and Robert Broom found early human-like fossils in South Africa, like the Taung child and Mrs. Place, showing our deep roots in Africa where these creatures lived and never left. Donald Johanson discovered Lucy in Ethiopia, and Meave Leakey found similar early ancestors in Kenya, both revealing beings that walked upright but stayed in Africa. Lee Berger's find of Australopithecus sediba in South Africa showed a later ancestor that was still African but had features closer to modern humans. Louis and Mary Leakey, working in Tanzania, dug up Paranthropus boisei, which stayed in Africa, and Homo habilis, a tool-using ancestor that also lived only in Africa but was a step toward Homo erectus, a species that later spread to Asia and Europe. These scientists' work painted a picture of our African origins with Homo habilis, setting the stage for the adventurous humans who eventually left the continent. Around 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus emerged in Africa, a groundbreaking species that became the first hominin to leave the continent, spreading to Asia and Europe with their upright posture, larger brains, and advanced tools. This adventurous ancestor set the stage for later humans, evolving into Homo heidelbergensis, Denisovans, and lastly Neanderthals. Africa is shown on the map as the cradle of hominins. Africa is densely populated with early Homo erectus and some lingering earlier hominins. The map visually portrays the very first successful wave of hominins leaving the African continent, utilizing the Levantine corridor. The Dmanisi archaeological site located in Georgia stands out as the earliest known outpost of hominins outside of Africa, marking a monumental step in the human journey dating back to about 1.8 million years ago. About 800,000 years ago, the hominin landscape was dominated by Homo erectus across much of Asia, continuing its long reign. In Europe, the picture becomes more nuanced, with the presence of Homo antecessor, as seen in Spain, and the potential emergence and spread of Homo heidelbergensis, both of which represent distinct evolutionary lineages that would eventually lead to Neanderthals in Europe. These hominins were generally robust, large-brained relative to earlier forms, and skilled tool makers adapted to diverse environments. 130,000 years ago was a time of hominin diversity. Modern humans were flourishing in Africa and making their first ventures out. Neanderthals were firmly established in Europe and parts of Asia. Older forms like Homo erectus and the unique Homo floresiensis still held their ground in other parts of Asia. The stage was set for the eventual global dispersal of Homo sapiens and the ultimate disappearance of other hominin species. The map shows area of Homo sapiens in Africa, colored in a reddish orange. This confirms that Africa was indeed the homeland of Homo sapiens at this time. The map also shows specific fossil locations of the species. The blue areas labeled transitional Homo heidelbergensis remains developing into Neanderthal, and orange-red areas for transitional Homo heidelbergensis and archaic Homo sapiens are crucial. This reflects the complex evolutionary picture where Homo heidelbergensis is seen as an ancestor to both Neanderthals in Europe and Homo sapiens in Africa. The green-striped areas stretching across vast parts of Asia are labeled area of Homo heidelbergensis and late Homo erectus. The map vividly illustrates the African origin of Homo sapiens. Our species is clearly depicted as originating and being widespread in Africa. The Neanderthal dominance in Europe. Neanderthals are firmly in control of the European landscape. And the complex Asian picture. Asia is shown as a melting pot of archaic hominins, including late Homo erectus and forms possibly ancestral to Denisovans, alongside the earlier presence of Homo heidelbergensis. Homo erectus spread out of Africa throughout Eurasia and gave rise to multiple species of Homo in different geographic regions. Multiple sister taxa of Homo then evolved in different geographic regions: Homo sapiens, Homo neanderthalensis, Denisovans, archaic Homo in Africa. The multiple sister species of Homo then came into contact as the species migrated. The out-of-Africa migrations primarily involved two hypothesized routes: the northern route and the southern route, or coastal route. The northern route through the Sinai Peninsula and into the Middle East is strongly supported by early hominin sites like Dmanisi, Georgia, for Homo erectus dispersals starting around 1.8 million years ago. The southern route across the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait from the Horn of Africa into Arabia is more debated for early hominins, but is considered a significant pathway for later Homo sapiens migrations, particularly around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, following coastal lines and during periods of lower sea level during the last glacial maximum. Why did they migrate? The simple answer: in search of food, water, and warmth. What was happening geologically during this period of Homo sapiens migration out of Africa? What events in geological history forced them to migrate? Climate changes due to global ice ages is the primary reason. Climate changes were happening frequently in periods of even several generations. Homo sapiens had to adapt very quickly. An ice age is a prolonged period of global cooling characterized by extensive ice sheets and glaciers covering large portions of Earth's continents. Within an ice age, there are cyclical fluctuations between colder glacial periods when ice sheets expand and warmer interglacial periods when they retreat. You are looking at the temperature of the Earth in the last 542 million years with glacial periods shown. We are in an ice age today. Let's look at the last 300,000 years. The diagram shows that there were 3 ice ages followed by 3 interglacial warmer periods. A tremendous degree of climate change occurred during man's evolution. Rapid temperature changes as well as sea level changes. During ice ages, the sea level drops, and conversely during interglacial periods, the sea level rises. During the last glacial maxima, which occurred about 20,000 to 26,000 years ago, 30% of the land surface was covered by ice. Only 10% is covered today. To give you an idea of the type of obstacles that Ice Age Homo sapiens had to deal with, here is a diagram of the height of these ice sheets at various portions of the North American continent, both in Canada and the US. The skylines of 4 major metropolises are superimposed against the thickness of the ice sheet that accumulated over Toronto, Chicago, Boston, and Montreal. What causes ice ages? Location of continental plates at the polar regions. Changes in the sun's orbit, wobble and axial tilt. Variations in solar output. Meteorites and supervolcanoes, tectonic activity. Changes in oceanic circulation. A detailed description of each of these causes will be discussed in a future presentation. Last glacial maximum, 20 to 26,000 years before present. Since this period, the sea level rose over 300 feet. All of the brown areas shown on the map were above sea level at this period and are now submerged. Besides major temperature drops, ice ages also create sea level drops that are substantial since the seawater in the upper latitudes are converted to ice sheets. Homo sapiens evolved and migrated during the last 3 glacial and interglacial periods, starting approximately 300,000 years ago. There was a tremendous degree of climate change due to global glacial periods during man's evolution between desert and tropical wet climates. Sea level changes were happening at a swift rate in the last 20 to 26,000 years. Sea level changes of up to 300 feet occurred during this period. Homo sapiens left Africa in a major northern migration in the period 70 to 50,000 years ago during the last ice age. Based on current evidence, the major migrations of Homo sapiens out of Africa, often referred to as the out of Africa event, are dated to around 70,000 to 50,000 years ago, with earlier smaller dispersals occurring as far back as 130,000 to 100,000 years ago. These timelines are based on genetic, archaeological, and paleontological data. Colder periods could have facilitated migrations by lowering sea levels and exposing land bridges like the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait between East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula. During the last glacial period, shown as one on the diagram, cooler and drier climates may have altered African environments, potentially pushing populations toward more habitable regions, including areas outside Africa. For example, lower sea levels during colder periods created more accessible routes into the Near East and beyond. New research suggests that frequent climate changes contributed to Homo sapiens' dramatic brain size increase. The enlargement of the brain relative to body size was especially pronounced over the past 800,000 years, coinciding with a period of strongest climate fluctuation worldwide. Radical and swift changes in climate helped hominins and higher species. For example, Homo sapiens increased their brain size, which allowed them to master survival in harsh climates. Larger brains allowed hominins to process and store information, to plan ahead and to solve abstract problems, produce versatile solutions to new and diverse survival challenges, an increase in the range of environments hominins confronted over time and space. In addition to severe climate change and sea level rise and sinking, Homo sapiens also had to deal with the impact of the Toba super eruption, a substantial threat to Homo sapiens' survival. The Toba super eruption, occurring around 74,000 years ago in present-day Sumatra, Indonesia, was the largest volcanic event of the last 2.5 million years, expelling an immense volume of ash and gases into the atmosphere. The Mount Toba eruption had significant environmental impacts, likely causing a volcanic winter in some regions and increased aridity in others. While it certainly presented challenges for Homo sapiens at the time, it appears that our ancestors in Africa were remarkably resilient and adaptable. They utilized their behavioral flexibility to adjust to changing food sources and environments. allowing them to survive this massive natural disaster. This is what Lake Toba looks like today. Why is the Mount Toba eruption significant? The Mount Toba supereruption created a significant volcanic winter. The estimated global temperature drop was close to 3 to 5 degrees Celsius, and this cooling is estimated to have lasted for 2 to 6 years. The eruption caused a prolonged, severe cooling event that gradually subsided. The Toba eruption caused low sunlight for years due to the massive atmospheric injection of ash and aerosols. Neanderthals died out 50,000 years ago. The reason for their demise can be conjectured to a variety of possibilities, including violence from modern humans, parasites, interbreeding, inability to adapt to climate change. They did not survive the last ice age. There is evidence for substantial mixture of Neanderthals' DNA in modern populations. Evidence was found in both European and Asian populations. In the 21st century, what do we know now that Darwin and others did not? Our modern understanding of human origins, often called the out-of-Africa theory, suggests that all people alive today can trace their ancestry back to a small group of early humans who lived in Africa roughly 200,000 to 300,000 years ago. This idea is strongly supported by looking at our DNA. Just like a family tree shows more branches and older roots where a family originated, the greatest variety in human DNA is found among people in Africa, indicating that our species has been evolving there the longest. Later, relatively small groups of these early Africans migrated out of the continent, gradually spreading across the globe and giving rise to all non-African populations, carrying with them only a fraction of the original genetic diversity, much like taking a few books from a vast library. The closest living relatives of humans are chimpanzees and gorillas, as Darwin surmised. Thanks to recent advancements in genome sequencing in 2025, scientists now have a complete picture of the genetic codes of both humans and chimpanzees. While earlier studies suggested we shared up to 99% of our DNA, more comprehensive analyses reveal that the actual similarity is closer to 85%. This broader view includes complex regions of DNA that weren't fully compared before, offering a deeper understanding of what makes us uniquely human. In Europe, the entire Baltic area and portions of northern Britain and northern European countries, as shown on the map, were covered by a thick 1.2 to 1.8 mile glacial ice platform. Glacial advances pushed hominins away from the thick ice sheets into more temperate climes of the mid-latitudes. Homo sapiens sought out the lucky latitudes of geographic serendipity and survived as described by Ian Morris in his book Foragers, Farmers, and Fossil Fuels. The African humid period, which occurred between 14,600 to 5,000 years ago, changed the Sahara into a lush and green landscape filled with lakes, vegetation, and wildlife, quite unlike today's desert. This transformation was driven by changes in Earth's orbit that boosted monsoon rains across North Africa. There are many sites in the Sahara Desert that have archaeological proof of this African humid period. One of these is the Tassili Najer National Park in southeastern Algeria. It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site renowned for possessing one of the world's most extensive and well-preserved collections of prehistoric rock art. Tasil Niager National Park is spread across a unique forest of stone landscape formed by eroded sandstone. Here there are more than 15,000 paintings and engravings offering an unparalleled visual chronicle of life in the Sahara from as early as 12,000 years ago when it was a verdant savanna. 15,000 cave paintings and engravings show human activity, cattle, boats, fishing, and hunting. These paintings show a verdant Sahara teeming with life in stark contrast to today's arid desert. The art vividly depicts the activities and environment of ancient hunter-gatherer societies, showcasing scenes of hunting wild animals like elephants, giraffes, hippos, and rhinos, alongside human figures engaged in dances and ceremonies. The remote and vast plateau of Gilf Kabir in Egypt's western desert is home to some of the most extraordinary and significant prehistoric rock art in the Sahara, providing a captivating glimpse into a time when this now arid region was a lush, life-filled savanna. Dating back primarily to the African humid period in Wadi Sura about 8,000 years ago, the art, found in numerous caves and rock shelters like the famous Cave of Swimmers and Cave of Beasts in Wadi Sura, depicts a rich tapestry of life. Vibrant paintings and engravings feature a diverse array of animals, including giraffes, hippos, cattle, lions, and antelopes, alongside human figures engaged in various activities from hunting and dancing to the enigmatic swimming postures that lend the Cave of Swimmers its name. Cave of Beasts. Located about 10 kilometers from the Cave of Swimmers, this site contains much more elaborate and larger rock art. It features hundreds of figures, including mysterious headless creatures, the beasts, as well as human and animal figures, and its meaning remains a mystery. The Cave of Beasts is estimated to be at least 7,000 to 10,000 years older than the Cave of Swimmers, dating back around 19,000 years or more. Some estimates suggest it could be as old as 20,000 BCE, making it one of the oldest known rock art sites in the world. As an example, let's look at the Nile River and Delta and the migration from the then drying Sahara to the Nile River region. Rapid and radical climate change in the last 5,000 years forced the nomadic population previously living in the lush savanna area to migrate to the Nile River and the Nile River Delta for survival. In Egypt, for example, the dramatic Sahara desertification period around 6,000 to 5,500 years ago coincides with the stages leading to Pharaonic Egypt. 4,000 years later, a second shorter 200-year dry period between 1200 to 1000 BC marked the end of the Bronze Age and regional societal collapse. But nothing is ever fixed in science. New findings are coming out every year, and in the last several years, new data, 2017, suggests that Homo sapiens may have evolved and left Africa earlier. In 2017, discoveries at Mislia Cave in Mount Carmel, Israel, revealed an anatomically modern human jawbone and teeth, Mislia 1, dating back 177,000 to 194,000 years. This finding significantly pushes back the out-of-Africa migration timeline by at least 50,000 years, suggesting earlier and potentially multiple dispersals of Homo sapiens from Africa, accompanied by sophisticated tools and fire use. The discovery at Jebel Irhoud in Morocco is even more significant than the Mount Carmel findings, as it pushes back the earliest known evidence of Homo sapiens to approximately 315,000 years ago. This predates the Mount Carmel findings by over 100,000 years and drastically reshapes our understanding of human origins. The Jebel Irhoud discovery in Morocco is currently considered the oldest securely dated fossil evidence for Homo sapiens. In essence, Darwin's initial insight about an African origin for humanity has been remarkably supported and elaborated upon by a vast body of scientific evidence over the past century and a half, making the out of Africa theory the most widely accepted model for the dispersal of modern humans across the globe. So hang on a little longer for the newest versions of the out of Africa theory. Thank you for watching, and please press the like button below if you enjoyed this presentation. The like button is that little thumbs up symbol. We are planning to add many more presentations covering a wide variety of science, history, and other enriching subjects, so please subscribe to our channel by pressing the subscribe button below. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please feel free to make them, and we will do our best to respond. Again, thanks for watching, and please do subscribe.